Dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Fajr, وَالْفَجْرِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ. He started in Surah Al-Fajr by swearing with the Fajr or with the dawn, and then he said وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, and by the 10 nights. And the scholars say that those 10 nights are the 10 nights of Thul-Hijjah, the first 10 days of the month of Thul-Hijjah, which starts, inshallah, with the will of Allah on Monday. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by something, that usually gives it a value, that gives it a meaning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing us to days that have a certain value for us that we should pay extra attention to. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith narrated by Ibn Abbas, he said, مَا الْعَمَلُ فِي أَيَّامٍ أَفْضَلُ فِي هَذِهِ الْعَشَرَةِ, that there is no better work to be done other than the work that gets done on those 10 days. So they asked, they said, وَلَا الْجِهَادِ, not even fighting or doing that jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, not even jihad, with the one exception, that if a man goes out or the person goes out fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with himself or herself and then all of their money and wealth, and they don't come back. So that would be the only exception to that rule. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by those 10 days, is trying to emphasize on the importance of those 10 days. And then the Prophet ﷺ is even increasing that emphasis or enforcing that emphasis on the importance of those 10 days. Now, there's another hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, or from the companions, that the Prophet ﷺ used to fast those 10 days. And then different hadiths that talk about only fasting the 10th. Now when we look at the concept again of fasting, why was the Prophet ﷺ encouraging us to fast on those 10 days? We go back to the value of fasting. What does value does to us? We fasted the month of Ramadan not long ago. Probably less than 2 months ago when we finished fasting the month of Ramadan. We came out from the month of Ramadan with high spirits. We came from the month of Ramadan feeling, somewhat purified. We came from the month of Ramadan feeling good about ourselves because we fought our internal struggles. We fought our temptations. We were fighting everything that our bodies were trying to tell us to do. We wake up in the morning, and if you're used to drinking your coffee, you're trying to prevent yourself, or you're trying to talk your mind into, no, I don't need my coffee today, or I can go on with my day without needing my coffee. We start our days without having to eat our breakfast. We continue our days without eating our lunches, and then we don't get to eat until towards the end of the day. It was around 9 o'clock when we were eating. Add to those temptations our ability or our will to talk bad, to lie. All of those things were things that we were fighting in the month of Ramadan. And the Prophet ﷺ was encouraging us to fast Mondays and Thursdays, as well as the 3 days of the month. So when he continues telling us that we need to fast those 10 days, or encouraging us to fast those 10 days, it's not because he felt like fasting them, but rather he wanted to continue grooming us to have better lives. He wanted to continue pushing ourselves to have that purified heart. We have the Mondays and Thursdays that are also encouraged to fast. And then we have the 3 days of the month. But then when you have 10 days, consecutive 10 days that if you're able to fast, you're encouraged to fast, that kind of pushes the envelope of where you're trying to go. You know, I can fast a day, I can fast 2 days, I can fast my 3 days. You know, 4 days becomes, you know, that's when this becomes, you know, a little bit difficult, because now you're changing your routine. You go into the 5th day and the 6th day, and now you're changing the way you're eating. You know, you're going back to the same routine of giving you a reminder that, hey, this could be close to the month of Ramadan. I mean, the 10 days are 1/3 of the month of Ramadan. And if you can put up with 10 days of fasting for those 10 days, not only that you're going to get the reward, but you're also going to be purifying your heart and purifying your mind from all those temptations and all those things that we like to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Hajj verses 28 about those 10 days, He said, وَيَذْكُرُ اسْمَ اللَّهَ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَعْدُودَاتٍ. And those servants, us, the believers, the Muslims, in those 10 days, we continue remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, مَا مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أَعْظَمُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَلَا أَحَبَّ إِلَيْهِ العمل فيهن من هذه الأيام العشرة فأكثروا فيهن من التهليل والتكبير والتحميد. Allah, or the Prophet ﷺ continues reminding us about the importance of those 10 days and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the work that gets done in those 10 days. So the Prophet ﷺ is encouraging us to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those 10 days. This is to keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the back of our minds continuously, back to back, day after day for 10 days. This is not just a way for us to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to glorify Him. We should be doing this every day. When you get sick and you go to the doctor and they prescribe medicine, they say make sure you take it consistently for 10 days or for 5 days. Or for 3 days. You take it 3 times a day, 5 days a week, so you can make sure the illness is gone, or that the medicine is fighting this virus or bacteria or illness or whatever it is that you're suffering from. If you take the medicine 1 day and you skip 2 and then you go back to 1, then you know you're giving the illness an advantage over the medicine. So as we continue doing the glorifying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we continue doing those things for 10 consecutive days, we're fighting the illnesses of our hearts. We're fighting the illnesses of our mind. We're fighting the illnesses of our tongues. The illnesses of what our hands do, what our eyes look at. This is a remedy the Prophet ﷺ has given us that will help us pull through the rest of the year. This is something that we're encouraged to do. And I guarantee you, once we try doing those 10 days, it's going to be difficult. Because we're used to we're used to going back to eating our breakfast in the morning, or drinking our coffee, or going to the gym during the day, or right after work. We're used to just talking about nonsense all day long. And continue praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That I can take 10, 15, 20 minutes out of my day to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And scholars say it again, these are not mandatory. This is sunnah for us to follow. But it's sunnah that it's encouraged to follow. This is something that the Prophet ﷺ was doing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was swearing by those days. Now, doing the good deeds, as the Prophet ﷺ said, is very encouraged, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the work that gets done on those days or those nights. This is where we have to excel. And sometimes we think about, what work or what good deed can I do? And the simplest answer is the sky is the limit. Where do you see yourself in doing good deeds? The Prophet ﷺ said, imatatul adha an at-tariq sadaqah. Removing, the bad things or harm's way, or removing harm out of people's way is considered charity. And a lot of times, we think of this as, broken glass, some nails, something that may hurt you as you're walking down the road. A few days ago, a friend of mine gave me a complete different perspective to that hadith. As we were going to a grocery store, he was driving, he parked his car, and as we came out of the car, there was a cart sitting right there behind or between, the parked cars. So he grabs that cart and starts pushing it towards the grocery store. So I'm thinking, he's going to use it. He takes that cart right to where those, where you can, park those little carts, and he sits it there. Actually, he took another one that was out of the way and put both of them in there, and we continue walking. So at that point, I was amused by what he did, and I asked him, I said, so why did you do it? He said, if it didn't hit my car, it was going to hit somebody else's car. So he was removing that harm out of people's way, just by a very simple gesture of removing that cart out of the car. It didn't hit his car. It was out of the way for his car, so he could have backed out or pulled forward, and that cart would have been completely out of his way. But he wanted to do a sadaqah. He wanted to get that good deed. He wanted to practice what the Prophet ﷺ said. Sometimes we think about things too much. Sometimes we think of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes we think of the way we can practice our beautiful religion in a very linear way. On the contrary, our religion, our sunnah, is very beautiful to practice. So when the Prophet ﷺ says that doing the good deeds or any good deed during those 10 days and 10 nights is very beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is where we need to become innovative. This is where we need to come brilliant and start thinking outside of the box. What can I do? This is when you walk into those little games and they sit you in a box with a lot of air flowing, and they put some money or some paper, and they let the air circulate, and they say the most you can catch will be given to you. So if you catch $10, it's yours. You have 30 seconds, you have 40 seconds, and then the air starts circulating, and then you'll see people just trying to catch the bills out of the air. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلِ الْأَعْلَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this concept. He said you have 10 days. Anything you do in those 10 days is going to be accounted for your good deeds. Not only that, but this is something that's going to be really good. Now, in theory, the beginning of those 10 days should be the sign that we need to start doing those good deeds. We have Muslims in our community that are in hospitals that usually don't have family to visit. We have sick in our community that have family that can visit them but also need some support or some kind of help. There's all kind of Muslims, all kind of people in our community that need help. Look at any masjid in the tri-state area, and I guarantee you they can use help. Your family needs help. Your parents need help. You can do this good deed to your family. We can reach out to the people that we know. You know, I can't sit here and tell you every single thing that you can do. I guarantee you, if you sit down after Jum'ah, between you and yourself, for 5 minutes, take 5 minutes of your time and think about, what can I do in those 10 days? What can I do in those 10 days to help? And this can be not only a help out to the community, this can be helping yourself. This can be you staying up late one night and doing qiyam, or waking up a little bit earlier before Fajr and doing extra prayers, reading extra Quran, you know, the fasting. Anything that you can think of in those 10 days is what we need to do. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. Ask God for forgiveness. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا محمد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. Dear brothers and sisters, one thing we have to keep in mind is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us those pointers, He gives us those opportunities as a way for us to get close to Him. You know, this is you looking at a tree with very delicious fruit. And you keep walking around the street trying to find, you know, some fruit you can catch. You don't have a ladder, you don't have anything you can climb that tree, or getting up that tree is very difficult. But then, every now and then, you'll see a branch coming down with very close to you with a lot of this delicious fruit. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing to us in these opportunities. This is the time where we have to push ourselves. You know, this is an opportunity for us to practice for Ramadan. We may feel that Ramadan is 10 months away, but believe me, before we know it, we'll be standing here talking about Ramadan being upon us, Ramadan being a few weeks away. If you don't want to use it as a way to practice for Ramadan, think of it as a way to practice for the 3 days of the month, or fasting Mondays and Thursdays. And if you don't feel like you can do it, pick a day or two. Pick the 10th day, or the 9th and the 10th day. Pick a good deed and try to stick with it. Do something that you really want to strive for. Something where you can say, Ya Allah, I may not have done everything I could, or I may not have used all of my time in those 10 days, but this is really a sincere work. This is a sincere prayer. This is, you know, 15 minutes of me praying just for your sake, just so I can get close to you, just because I know doing those good deeds in those 10 days is beloved to you. Let's show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what we really want. I mean, you ask anybody, what do you want? They're going to tell you, I want paradise. You know, this is our ultimate goal, that we end up in Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of us in Jannah at one point. So, how do we make ourselves worthy of this Jannah? This is our opportunity. Starting Monday, what can be the one or multiple things that we can do to be worthy of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can say, yes, my servant did this because they want to get close to me. My servant did this because they had that sincere action done. And again, this can be a physical good deed. This could be something that you do between you and yourself, reaching out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an extra prayer, an extra something that you want to do to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.